Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Side Note, a podcast dedicated to electronic music and all things related. Today, it is my great pleasure to bring to you DJ Baz, a veteran of the local LA scene here and co-head of the Plastic Love label and Night. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hi. Hello.
Thank you again so much for being here. Man, so, we don't know each other that well, but we kind of go back. We've definitely, I for one have just kind of been kind of a passive participant in the scene for many years. I feel like you are much more active. I did throw a party back in like '08 or something, and I did invite Baz and Clovis, another kind of local known entity, to play at our party. Very strange, unwell attended New Year's party, but still very fun.
Everyone's parties are unwell attended. Okay.
That's true.
No one has a perfect night. Don't worry.
That's true. But yeah, man, I was just wondering, like, kind of how did you get your start in rave, and what brought you to it, and so forth.
Yeah. So I started DJing when I was like, I want to say 16 years old.
Okay.
I bought my first pair of turntables, and I was started out playing like house parties in high school and stuff like that. Just like me and some friends were at home, and it just kind of went on from there. Like from house parties to eventually I was in college playing house parties, and I was playing college parties. I had a radio show in college, and it just kept kind of going. I didn't really start playing like out properly probably until I was like 18 or 19 or something.
Wow, that's still pretty young though. Like that's
it's in the global scheme. I feel like it's not like you hear stories about people playing when they're like 17 playing at parties and clubs and stuff like that. But because I grew up in Orange County, and there really was not much of a scene there. I mean, it was really, really, really small. I just started playing local stuff before getting my first gig was actually in Las Vegas, and it was awful. It was like some off strip club.
Wait, so you're like 18 in Vegas. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And how did you land that gig?
It was I was working at Target at the time, and the guy that was throwing the party was a friend of mine at Target. Okay. So my coworker basically at Target got me that gig. And I was playing like jungle and drum and bass stuff at the time too. So it was just like,
gotcha.
I don't know. It was very weird, but it was fun. I mean, it was cool. I got put up in a Motel 6, real classy, real nice. I don't think I got paid. But I played like 2 hours for maybe 6 people and a couple bartenders. So that was cool.
That's what it's about. I feel like,
and that was my first actual gig like out in the world. And it's been uphill or downhill. I'm not sure what the good one is, but ever since.
So I guess, taking it back, like what was it about rave that kind of drew you to it to begin with when you were young? Was it like listening to a particular track or seeing something? Because I know for me, I remember very distinctly being in 5th grade and seeing like a local news scare story. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like, your kids are doing ecstasy.
Like, really?
And I see I'm a young kid, and I see like a cute girl, like, it feels so great, and I just want to hug everybody. I'm like, this is pretty fucking appealing. So I remember like from that moment, like the seed had been planted, and it was like sort of a gradual kind of coming to that. So like, did you have a similar?
Mine was like, it was more, okay, so the very first time I heard like electronic music, I was with a friend and his dad. We went on this like shooting trip, like not a hunting trip, but like, we'd go out in the desert and shoot guns and shit like that. Cause again, Orange County. And his dad was playing Northern Exposure.
Whoa, Sasha, okay, wow.
And I was like, what are we listening to? And he's like, oh, this is Sasha. I'm like, oh, tell me more. So he actually gave me my first like mix CD. And then he gave me mixes off of this radio station we used to have called Mars FM, which I think eventually became it became Groove Radio at one point, and it changed a bunch, but it was Mars FM in like the 90s. And he gave me a bunch of mixes off there, and that completely just, blew my mind. I don't know just the idea of mixing records and music, right. Totally blew my mind. And that's kind of how I started. And the first record store I went to was actually next door to, I was like 14 at the time. I was in Taekwondo. In like a strip mall, and there was a record store next door, and I used to go to the record store after class and just hang out. And same thing, I was like, what are we listening to? What is this? And the guy DJing, he's like, oh, it's house music. I'm like, oh, cool. But I mean, it was no like that was my introduction. I didn't have like an older brother or a cousin or some other kind of. Okay. It was just like happenstance where I was in this place that just had, house music, and it just spoke to me on this. I know it sounds cheesy, but it just speaks to you on a different level, and you get into it, and you're just like, oh, and then it's next thing you know, it's your entire life revolves around dance music.
Yeah, like I don't know what it is about. I mean, I guess other music genres are the same, but I don't know. To me, there's something very specific to dance music that it's very all encompassing. It's sort of, it invites you in, and then suddenly your identity becomes kind of firmly embroiled in it.
I think as it stems from like the old like 90s, 80s, 90s thing of like Plur, of togetherness and, that whole thing. And it's really easy to get lost in it, and I think that's what it is. That's part of it is if you are able to go to an actual, rave, an actual, a real rave or an actual club, it's you kind of get lost in that feeling of being with a bunch of people, listening to new music, and kind of not having to worry about your life. You can escape whatever's going on.
Yeah, it's like it's a very spiritual experience in a culture where we don't actually have like many spiritual outlets, right? Like, yeah, you can go to the mega church,
Yeah, exactly.
On Sunday and see Pat Robertson or whatever, but there's no kind of legitimate, I mean, I don't want to say legit, but there's no kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like palpable way.
Yeah. Well, also like you said, it's different than religion because, it doesn't matter what your background is or what your
there's no doctrine, no dogma. It's just Plur.
Yeah.
It's Plur.
Yeah, it's just Plur. It's just Plur. So, but it doesn't really matter what your orientation is or your gender or anything like that. Right. It's like you're there. Everyone's ever the same thing.
Right. Yeah, and then if you go back to like the roots of dance music, right? It was all very much kind of cultivated in kind of gay or queer scenes. Exactly. It's rooted in openness. Yeah. I guess one thing though, that we have to acknowledge too is kind of the role that drugs play in the whole kind of scene as well. And I know to me, it's like the sum is very much greater, or the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts, right? Yeah. So it's not that you're just listening to music and having a drug experience. To me, there's something very unique about those two things married together that makes the scene so special.
Like for the first, I don't know how many years that I was into it. I didn't do drugs at all. I was like 16, 17, didn't touch a drug.
Interesting.
So I don't remember when it was. I think it was EDC. Like one of the
like the LA Coliseum version.
Yeah, there was one. They used to do it at the in San Bernardino at the what was it called, the Orange Show or something? Or, something like
the Orange Show, yeah.
Yeah, so it was there. That was like the first ecstasy, like my first pill, and it was like I remember how like thinking like, oh, I don't need drugs. Like I like the music. Wait, is that who needs drugs? And then I did a drug, and I was like, oh, everyone needs drugs. Apparently, we all need drugs.
Like I get it.
But like that marrying of like being able to experience that musical world while also on ecstasy is it's otherworldly. I mean, it really is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember being drawn to the music anyway. But for a lot of people, it's just like this is just repetitive. Repetitive bullshit.
Yeah.
Like what?
But I mean, that's also kind of
on?
like the there's joy in the repetition. You know what I mean? That's the whole techno ethos is kind of the joy of repetitive.
100%. So there's like this meme quote from, I remember reading on the internet years ago, but it was something like, oh well, if media influences children, then we should have a whole generation of kids who like running around in dark rooms eating pills.
Yeah. You're like, oh well, yeah, it's true.
A la Pac-Man.
Yeah. Pac-Man we'd all be listening to repetitive music, eating pills. Like, oh, yeah, never done that.
The rave scene is all thanks to Pac-Man. Thank you, Namco, for giving us rave.
Yeah. But I mean, that was like if you go back to the early '80s, late '70s. That is kind of ecstasy really is the catalyst for dance music, that whole scene. I mean, you can read the stories about Oakenfold going to Ibiza and experiencing, Balearic music for the first time and kind of bringing it back with, what's his name? They did the Shoom parties in the UK. I can't forget the name. Oh my God, it's driving me crazy. Danny Rampling, I think.
Danny Rampling?
The Shoom parties. Yeah, that was their whole thing was like, we're going to bring this Balearic music back and kind of kickstart the acid house rave. That whole, acid house obviously a little bit different, but that whole style of raving / clubbing that was based very much on drug culture.
Yeah. So do we know kind of who was the first to marry those two things together? Was it in Ibiza or?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say something incorrect, but like everything that I've read kind of states that like it Ibiza was sort of the beginning of it, only because that was one of the places that it was very hedonistic and everybody could go there, and it was like a secret, it was a secret, like nobody really knew about it. It was a secret, like everyone talked about it in hushed tones, like, oh, you gotta go to Ibiza. And there was a DJ who's, I think he just recently, I feel like he just recently passed away. I can't remember his name. It's one name. I can't remember, but he was like the DJ on like an Ibiza. And he was mixing Balearic records, and he was, mixing, it was obviously pre-house, but mixing that real slow burn kind of.
Oh, was it Padilla, the Cafe Del Mar guy?
I think, yes, and I think there might have been one more person whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. But the story goes that, like, Oakenfold and Danny Rampling and a couple other sort of more prominent UK DJs went there and then kind of brought that style back to the UK in their own respective places, and then tried to kind of launch it. And then like the rest is history. And then it was like, oh, all these other, like Acid House came up and all these other parties started popping up, and it kind of just spread from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is kind of a general understanding of how it happened, but I would love to kind of know who like the patient zero was, or like what that kind of inflection point was.
Because I mean, it also happened, I think, simultaneously in multiple areas. Like a lot of people, I think, don't give America enough credit. I mean, we invented
I feel like
house music.
It was happening here too.
Like Chicago and Detroit, they invented house and techno, and people, I think, don't give them enough credit in that respect. Everybody talks about I was doing it, but everyone was always talks about the UK scene and how they did rave and da. And it's like, yeah, that was a big part of it, but wouldn't have been possible if not for Acid House. And where did Acid House come from?
Yeah.
DJ Pierre, who accidentally got a 303 and figured out how, like, oh, this thing is kind of a shitty synthesizer, but it makes a really cool noise.
Yeah, like from docs I've seen, I feel like we kind of invented it, and it was a thing in Detroit and in Chicago, but it was the UK that really kind of like embraced it.
I think they
made it their own.
Like launched it more into the like into the public eye and like the pop sort of like lexicon, and they were just, like you said, more accepting of it, and were able to kind of make rave, that kind of idea that you have of rave, like bigger.
Got it.
But again, we were doing rave here in the States too. We had like LA had its own raves in like the 80s and 90s. We had all the
Oh crap! Sorry, I think we're getting. Can you just twist that clockwise until it turns off? Just twist the whole thing. The whole knob. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Sorry. So I guess changing gears, I wanted to ask you if you are on top of everything that's going on with Theta Burn.
Yes, I am. And it is very funny. I love it. It's hilarious. I can't tell if he thinks he's serious or not. But it is very funny.
So for people who don't know, shout out to the worst techno memes ever group on Facebook. I think it's like 200,000 people strong. And it's a group on Facebook that basically makes the shittiest, but also most hilarious
worst memes. Yeah. It's in the name.
About techno and rave culture. Until I discovered this thing, I had never felt so like seen before. It's like, holy shit, there's like there's 200,000 other people
and they all
who
have
like
the same dumb joke that you're trying to make.
Who understand. We all understand each other. But yeah, the latest controversy is that Carl Cox posted a drum and bass set on Mixcloud, and this local DJ from Vegas, decided that he would write a treatise about set.
It's like a stack of text about
dissecting Carl's mixing and giving him like pointers for specific transitions.
Exactly how to mix.
Yeah, when you move from A to B, you shouldn't have done it like this. And I really see your house music sensibility coming through.
It is very funny. It is incredible.
But it's gone viral, and the internet has definitely run with it. But
the cap on all this, I don't know if you saw it, but Carl Cox's latest mix on BBC Sounds is a drum and bass mix. So it's like that is the cap on all of it. It's like, oh, someone better get Theta Burn on the phone just to let him know, like, hey, your boy Carl Cox out there wilding. You might want to reel him in.
And then Cox is also like responding to the guy.
Super hot, super humble, tongue in cheek response. Like, oh, thank you. It's always nice to learn from the masters.
Super classy, but also like shade at the same time. Yeah. Like, oh man.
Carl Cox is a trip, dude. He has his own racing team.
What?
He has like a motorcycle racing team in Australia, I think.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
He's got to be one of the coolest people in the world.
Has to be. Yeah. Like, does he? Because I know during the pandemic he was out. He was always live streaming from Australia. I guess that's his.
He might live there. He must. I don't know. I don't know if his wife is Australian.
Okay.
But I remember the only time that I've actually met him like in person was at Coachella like years ago. Whenever one of the times he played, and it was actually with Clovis. We're walking around backstage, in the backstage at the time. And Carl Cox was driving by on a golf cart with his supermodel wife. Like insanely beautiful supermodel wife, and they were going to like set, and he just had it with his big smile and his big gap tooth, and he's like waving at people.
Oh yes. How often do you think he must get that? Like,
yeah, yes, yes. Well, I mean, he says it in every like radio show. Yeah. Like I don't even know if he knows he does it at this point. It's like a kick.
And people see him in public and like, oh yes, oh yes. Is he just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. I guess speaking of like, do you have any notable kind of interactions with DJs?
Well, I mean, me and Jimmy, Classic Love, we threw parties for a couple of years, so I've got a lot. And also, we were like a resident at Avalon for a while, so I've got some stuff from there. I mean, probably I don't know.
Yeah, like what sticks out to you, I guess, in your like illustrious career? Like that was.
There's a very obvious one that I feel like anybody that knows me, that's watching this or listening to this, will immediately know what I'm talking about. Is my Lee Bird story?
Oh yes, okay.
Okay, so here's the. Hold on. I want to preface this by saying I no longer want to talk about this, but it keeps coming up.
Okay.
And every time it comes up, I feel like I have to talk about it. It's like a weird thing. I talked to my therapist about it too. I'm like, what do you think this means? And she's like, well, I think you have like unharbored resentment. I'm like, no, I don't think that's what it is. I don't think that's what it is. Because at this point, it's just fun. It's funny.
So yeah, do you want to discuss that?
Okay. Right, gather around. Here we go. Here's the story. Okay.
Because I feel like I saw some of this online.
Okay. So here, I'll give you the story. So I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it's 2012. It might be a little before or earlier than that. Later, I'm not sure. Me and Jimmy are booked to play Liquid Summer, which is a festival in Ensenada.
Okay, in Mexico.
In Mexico, okay. Yeah. And I think we had played it the year before or the year after. I don't remember if this was the first or second year. But I think this was our second year. It's an awesome party, mostly like local DJs, like local Mexican DJs, all like fantastic music. You're on the beach. I mean, it's a proper big stage, a proper festival. The headliner was Lee Burridge and Matthew DK. And we were supposed to play, I think initially we were supposed to play before them. And I think Lee had messaged the promoter, whatever, and said, I don't want to play this time. I want to move it, whatever. So I want to shift times around. And they came to us and said, do you guys mind if we move your time slot? Because they wanted to play earlier. I think they wanted to take our slot. We were going to play later. And I said, sure, that's fine. I don't mind. But I have to leave at a certain time on Sunday morning because I'm catching a train back to LA because I had a couple party. So I was playing the rooftop.
Back to backs. Wow.
Yeah. So we played Saturday. I was supposed to play Culper on Sunday. And I said, fine, just make sure that I'm, leave by this time so I get the early train because if I miss it, I'm going to be late, right? Because there's 2 trains or whatever in the morning. And they said, yeah, no problem. That's fine. You'll go back with Lee. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So Lee ends up playing earlier. We play afterwards. Everything's fine. I think we get maybe an hour or so in our set. And the promoter's like, hey, the car is here to take you guys back to the border. I'm like, all right, I'm going to bounce. So I tell Jimmy, I'll see you later. Start walking to the car, go to the car, knock on the door. It's an SUV. Lee Burridge opens the door. I'm like, hey, man. And I try to get in. He's like, oh, no. What are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm going back with you guys. And he's like, oh, no, the car's full. I'm like, well, I'm supposed to go back with you guys. Well, the car's full. Close the door. I'm like, what? It's him and me, like Matthew DK and I don't know, 2 girls that they were seeing, whatever, in a giant like SUV, like an Escalade or something, right? It's not like they were in in a car,
right? So I guess as far as you remember, though, was he like kind of being brisk about it, or kind of a dick? He's like, it's full. Close it. He's just like trying to close it on me. I'm like, I'm supposed to go back with you guys. He's like, oh, it's full. Close it, and then like the car takes off. So I go find the promoter, and the promoter's like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to leave. I'm like, yeah, they left. He's like, what? Well, yeah, they left. He told me I couldn't go in. He's like, who? I said, well, Lee said I couldn't go in. So then our promoter is like scrambling, trying to get me a car because they have to be back, at a certain time. And we're in the middle of Ensenada. He's like, well, the best I can do is a cab. It's going to take about an hour to get here. I'm like, okay, fine. So get in a cab. You finally get to the border. I'm late for missed the first train, catch the second train. Who do I see on that second train? Lee and Matthew DK. They didn't miss their fucking train. But because that train that we were on, it was delayed several times, and I was delayed getting back to LA. So I missed my gig entirely. I think I rolled up like probably right at the, I was supposed to open. So I rolled up at the end of it. And luckily Justin from Drew was like covered for me. I think I played maybe 20 minutes before, who was playing with my favorite robot, I think was playing with us. So they, 20 minutes before they got on. And I was like, I'm sweating. I'm just like, yeah, train delay. Like trying, humping it to the stand from the train station. And like, what happened? I'm like, oh, you don't understand, Lee. And so anyway,
don't really think much of it until I realized no apology, nothing like that. I brought it up several times, mostly like as a joke, as like an anecdote, and then it gets more and more. And then I posted it on this other guy's Facebook page. This guy Tusk Wax, who's a record label, and same thing. He says, "Name one DJ you would spark out cold," and I said, "Well, it's obviously Lee Burridge, and here's why." And so because of that, every couple of months, somebody will post a link to that story, and it's just going on and on and on.
It just keeps
going on. So much so that Tuskwax started a beer, and the very first beer they put out was called the New England. It was a Burridge New England IPA, based on that story, because it's like the most. It's probably the busiest post that guy's ever had. So at this point, it's funny. I'm like, I would like an apology. I'm never going to get one. And he gave me some kind of half-ass, we had this whole thing earlier that night where somebody had accosted. I'm like, Lee, first of all, you know who I am. It's not like I was like a new person.
Right.
I mean, Lee Burridge knows who I am. We hung out several times. Shady.
Interesting.
Shady.
Well,
and also, I don't buy his whole nice guy routine. I think it's bullshit. That's my problem. More than anything, I think it's a bullshit routine. This whole I'm a nice guy, Lee Burridge. Hey, no. Fuck that.
Well, so when Reagan was on last time, he talked about kind of a spat that he had with Damien and Damien Lazarus, and I
actually
said,
appreciate that he did what he did, because somebody,
I was like,
people need to speak out about
Damien, please come on and we'll do a group hug and we'll get to some reconciliation. I extend the same offer to Lee Burridge.
No, I'm going to knock him out. That's the whole. It's going to happen. That's the.
Man, that's crazy, man. Well, I hope that you guys can reconcile at some point.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's funny more than anything. But people that I've never met will be like, "Oh, hey, are you Baz with the Lee Burridge story?" I'm like, "Jesus Christ." I'm like, "Oh, God, yeah." And what happened? I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go." All right.
I feel like now that's just gonna follow you around for years to come.
But I would for the record, I'd like to state that I don't ever bring it up. People mention it to me, except for today, where I was tricked into it. Other than that, it's not me.
So it seems like a lot of us in the SoCal scene are very much influenced by Sasha and Digweed. Yeah. Have you ever met any of those guys?
Yeah. So it's I have actually played with Sasha a handful of times. I think I opened for him once or twice.
At Avalon.
At Avalon,
okay.
Yeah. He was doing he was doing a party every month in the summer. And I think, sorry. Was it? I'm forgetting exactly what it was. It was either that or it was James Zabiela's Born Electric parties. I can't remember exactly what it was. But somehow I played with him a handful of times. One of them, I think, was Sasha. It was Sasha, Dr. Nika, and myself. Fantastic party. Dr. Nika, incredible. Sasha, obviously, Sasha. I've never played with Digweed, but he is one of my favorite DJs. I would give anything to open for John Digweed. I absolutely love him. But Sasha I've opened for a handful of times. So much so that I'm actually in a group chat, like a soccer group chat with a bunch of Brits, and Sasha's in there. And so I always fanboy a little bit. I got to fanboy a little bit on there. For the record, very funny in the group chat.
Sasha or
Sasha?
You?
Sasha's very funny.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He's very funny in the group chat.
Yeah, because I feel like, as a consumer, who's not really kind of behind the scenes much, there's not a lot, and nobody really knows the man.
Yeah.
I did meet him once at a bar in New York. It was a random Tuesday night or something, and it was advertised as Sean Cusick was playing.
Yeah. So
I show up to see Sean Cusick, and then I see
because they're boys. That's
and I see Jimmy Van M is there, and then I see Sasha there. This is back in 04 or something. I lose my shit, fanboy. And at this point, he must be so used to it. And I think the frustration for him is it's never, a hot girl. It's always some nerd dude.
Exactly.
You're the shit.
My prized possession is I have the Northern Exposure triple vinyl, and it's signed by Sasha and Digweed.
Awesome.
They signed it. I got it framed. It's my prized possession. I love it. I also had Sasha Digweed and Jimmy Van M sign my Delta Heavy DVD, and then immediately lost my Delta Heavy DVD, which is a shame. That was one of the best parties, probably of all time.
Delta Heavy?
Delta Heavy, yeah.
Which leg did you?
I did the one in LA at the Mine.
Okay.
And I did it the day before I had a final in school or something. So I went to school all kinds of banged up.
Okay.
To do this final. I passed obviously, but I don't remember it at all. I don't remember that test at all.
I didn't. So you were 21 already by that time? No?
No.
Okay.
I had a fake ID for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember during that tour, I think I was maybe 18 or 19, so I couldn't get into the Mayan one, but the San Francisco leg was all ages.
Oh, nice.
So I remember flying up to that one and going to that party there, which was also similarly epic.
Yeah.
That was the tour where they had like the team that did the opening credits for Seven or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's so good.
Legit.
That's really when I feel like I kind of like came into my own as a DJ, was that sort of progressive house style like music. I love it. Even now, like I still bust them out from time to time.
Yeah, like I mean, I think like obviously the two of them, their mark on dance music, like writ large, is kind of incalculable. But I feel like, especially here in Southern California, like especially DJs of our age, like everyone's kind of like,
everyone's Sasha Digweed.
Sasha Digweed.
It's weird though, because I haven't seen, like, I mean, I think the last time I saw Digweed play in person was probably like 7 years ago maybe, and like my style has changed a lot in the past couple. Obviously it always changes, but like it's really gone away from the stuff that Digweed plays, but still. I mean, I love it. I love what he does. Like during the pandemic, he was streaming every weekend from his house.
Yeah.
He would do bunker sessions, and they were all just, I'm like, God, I miss John Digweed. Like, I didn't realize how much I missed him until I was like, oh yeah, he still bangs it out.
I feel like these days, like Digweed for me, it remains more consistent, where I think Sasha kind of, it's gotten very ethereal, or I mean, he's always kind of had that, but he's leaned into it in his old age, and some of it vibes with me more.
He has a
new
new project called Lucas
or Luzascura. Like the ethereal breaks.
Yeah, which is cool. It's really cool.
Yeah,
the brand is cool. The music's cool. The whole thing is cool. I think the idea came from him, like, because he lives in Ibiza now.
Yeah,
and I think the whole idea came from him. That kind of Ibiza lifestyle, like that kind of more, like I was saying, like that whole Balearic.
Yeah, super cool. Though the one thing that makes me a little sad is like I'm seeing a lot more like IG posts of him sitting and DJing.
Yeah. I wonder if that was because of like COVID rules, because they made it sound like they're really weird about it in Ibiza.
Oh,
like they keep opening and locking shit down. So like, I think the idea was like
you can't
dance.
Okay,
so it's like you have to like, I think that's what it is. Like you can have music but no dancing.
Okay,
don't you dance?
Because dancing spreads COVID. This looks very geriatric. Like,
I don't think that's the case with him. Although, I mean, I don't want to say it, but he's old. He's old.
Yeah,
he's old. I mean, he's like in his 50s. Or he's old. So is Digweed. It's crazy because
they're like dads.
I don't want to be old. Yeah, I think that's the problem. Is you look at them and it's almost like looking into like your
it's like the ghost of Christmas future.
Yeah, the ghost of rave future is staring back at you. But he's still doing it. I mean, he's still banging out.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing shows this fall.
Yeah.
They're doing
in New York.
Yeah, and then they just announced one in Denver.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping
they do an LA one. I'm going.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. The last time I saw them together was like a giant New Year's.
Oh, like Giant Maximus, like 06 or something?
No, there was one. It was one with Jimmy Van M in like 2010.
Okay.
But it was Sasha Digweed and Jimmy Van M opened. It wasn't Maximus. I went to that one too. I went to Giant Maximus too. That was the one at the Bell.
It was downtown.
Yeah. The Bonaventure, right?
Yeah, there was that one, and there was also one that they played.
That was Giant Maximus is different. Yeah, you're right.
It was
was it the one with the Killers?
Maybe
that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
No, the Killers one. No, the one with the Killers had Digweed, no Sasha.
Got it.
And I remember I don't know if I had met my wife at the time. My wife now. I don't know if we were dating at the time. I think we were. But we walked by you could hear the Killers warming up, and they were playing like the opening keys for like Mr. Brightside.
Oh,
you
awesome.
could just hear it like on the streets because echoing everywhere. Why don't anyone do that anymore? Like street parties, those are dope.
Yeah, well, I guess because like there used to be a lot more empty lots in LA, and now they're all luxury apartments. But so I wanted to ask you, you and Jimmy Maheras do Plastic Love. It's been going for a long time. What was the inception of that? And, obviously you also have a career outside of electronic music. Yep. How do you navigate kind of doing both things without, going into sheer exhaustion?
You don't. I unfortunately do go to sheer exhaustion all the time. And that's why I'm in therapy. Mental health is very important. You gotta have a therapist. No, but Jimmy and I started, we were both DJing at Basic in King.
Okay, I remember that party.
Like a long time ago. Yep. Yeah, Jimmy was a resident. I had played a handful of times, but Jimmy, I think, had played a lot more. He was definitely knew those guys a lot better. And we met there because his girlfriend at the time and my girlfriend, who's were really good friends. Excuse me. And we started hanging out because of that. And, one thing led to another. He started DJing, I think at like Vanguard or something, and asked me to play with him because he was just him all night in the, at the back of Vanguard. And he's like, I can't do, 4 hours, 6 hours alone. If you want to DJ with me. I'm like, yeah, sure. So we started playing records together, playing music together. And then that kind of just turned into, should we do our own night? We should maybe turn this into like an actual like partnership. And so,
so was it a monthly or a weekly?
I think Vanguard was monthly, and then we started doing Avalon. I think it was monthly, and then it was bi-monthly. Like we were pretty much every other weekend in the Honey Lounge at Avalon, where it was either just the two of us, or it would be the two of us and a guest, and we were trying to kind of book, if not somebody that was from LA, we were definitely trying to book guests from other places, but they weren't really giving us much in the way of budget. And when I say they weren't giving us much, I mean they gave us nothing. So it was like, they're like, you get $100. You can figure out how you want to pay people $100. So we did that for probably, I think like maybe a little less than a year.
Yeah. So like, what are all the mechanics that go into throwing a night? Because like, again, like I'm mostly just a consumer of this.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, well, there's multiple avenues into it. The probably most common one is like, you are at a bar or some other kind of venue. And you kind of strike a partnership with them that says like, look, can we use your bar basically to throw a party? And then we'll strike some kind of deal where maybe you don't pay some kind of like, as a promoter, as a DJ, you don't pay like a fee, but you'll split the bar after like a certain number, right? So like if the bar hits $1,500, then like you guys will split everything after $1,500. But if they don't hit $1,500, you have to make up that difference.
Okay.
So that's a pretty common one. I don't know if the people do that anymore.
So the venue is guaranteed that floor.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, it's a split. Split. Okay.
That's probably the most common one for like smaller, like, more like smaller independent, I want to say promoters, or you can do everything DIY, like a proper like warehouse / more warehouse underground promoter where you basically find everything. You find a venue, you pay to rent it out for the night. You pay your bartenders, you get the alcohol, you pay for the staff, you pay for the booking, you do everything yourself. Which obviously costs a lot more, there's a lot higher risk involved, but you make all the money yourself. Does that make sense? You don't have to worry about a guarantee or whatever. So it's you are kind of doing all the risk reward stuff. I would say I prefer that more, even though it's a lot more like harrowing because you're constantly worried about, as much as you want to put on a good party, you're constantly worrying about money. It's always in the back of your head, like, oh God, we have to break even, at least break even. Or then you get to a point, acceptance where you're like, well, let's just minimize how much we lose. Like that's kind of
right.
Like if we don't make any money, whatever, but I just don't want to lose as much as last time. And then if you're really lucky and you're really good, you actually start making money on these parties. There's a lot of people that are very successful at it. Jimmy is very successful at it. His Into the Woods parties are great. What's the other one? Jenny Love and her crew, whose name escapes me at the moment, they're also fantastic at the party.
Oh, with Masha and Heidi Lawton, yeah.
Yeah, so they do. I mean, we used to do, when Jenny Love used to do Jacked, and we did a party with Jacked. It was fantastic. It was us and Jacked and Move D and Horseman Disco, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. We also did one with Levon Vincent and Jacked, and it was great. But they now go by, I think it's called Surround or something, I want to say, or like Dusk LA.
Oh, Surround LA, I think that's what it is.
Surround is one of them, and I think Dusk is another one they do. Jenny does a lot. She's kind of a hard one to pin down. I feel like she's involved in everyone's party in some fashion. Right.
I do know she's kind of everywhere.
Yeah. The Midnight Lovers guy is also very good.
Okay.
Silky and those dudes also really good. So.
And then so you strike your arrangement with the venue, and then you're moving on to booking. Is that
So
okay.
So that's one.
How much does it typically cost if you're not booking? Like a Sasha or Digweed. Like what's the
Again, it depends. It depends on the DJ. It depends on like the agent you're working with. Some people have like, if you have a really good relationship with an agent, you'll kind of be the first one they go to. Sometimes you get slightly better of a deal. Sometimes not really. Sometimes you kind of get into a bidding war. I would say on average, anywhere between, depending who they are, $1,500 to $5,000.
Okay.
For a booking fee, kind of depends. Sometimes more. Sometimes people want a lot more. I won't like name names, but sometimes people want like a ridiculous amount more. You're like, bro, come on. Right. Like my party, like at most, we're talking 200 people, 300 people. Right. Unless I'm going to charge $60 a pop, I'm not going to break even here. Help me out. So that's another thing you have to think about is the venue that you're going to be in. Because if it's a 200, if you're expecting about 200 to 300 people, maybe 400 people, how much can you reasonably charge that you aren't going to turn people away? $20, $30,
right?
More than that, and people are going to be like, "Oh, I'm not going to go."
Yeah, any more than $30.
Yeah, 30 is like the cap, So like, if you're charging more than that, people aren't going to want to go, and then you're like, well, now then you're really hurting. And I'm always of the mind, and Jimmy hated it. It was like I'd rather get people inside and like drinking, especially if we have the bar, because like you'll make money back on the bar, even if you're not going to make it at the door. He absolutely hated when I would do that. When people would like try to haggle with me at the door, I'd be like, just go inside.
Oh, I see.
he'd be like, what are you doing? Well, just go, it's fine, go.
Right, so you're
sacrificing
sacrificing ticket price to get people in there to buy booze. That makes sense.
You have to be a very disciplined person not to do that, because I'm not at all. If I work the door, I'm like, hey, everybody, come on in.
Yeah, you do like the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, come on in. That's why the secret weapon is what you do is you get somebody that works the door that doesn't know anybody. Then no one tries to like pull any shit.
Got it.
So you just hire somebody to work the door, and they're like, I don't know who you are. It's $20.
Right. It's not like, oh, I know you.
Yeah, it's like almost like, hey, Baz. I'm like, no, get in here. No, why no? Hey, man, come on in. But if it's like, yeah, $20. Oh, but I'm on the list. No list. $20.
Yeah, and then have you found it challenging to kind of keep your professional life and your kind of DJ life?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a secret. I mean, all of my coworkers, managers, everybody knows that I DJ and throw parties. I'm not shy about it. I don't keep it a secret or anything.
Got it.
But the understanding is like, I have a job. This is my job. I have to be at work when I have so I definitely have to make concessions one way or the other. Sometimes it's a lot in the past. More often than not, it has unfortunately been my DJ persona that's taken the hit. I haven't been able to play.
Yeah, understandably.
I haven't been able to play as many parties. I haven't been able to do as much because I've got to work. I got a job. In my job, I work in TV, so I'm busy. I work Saturdays, sometimes Sundays, depending on the sport, because I work in sports. So it's in the summer I work Saturdays. In the winter it's usually Sundays. So it's like I got one day in the weekend off, and I kind of have to work stuff around that. Obviously, I've gone to work in not the best of shape because I've gone out the night before. But it's I have to just manage when I'm there, and I do, and I'm still there. It's been fucking 15 years, and
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's worked. It's worked.
I mean, yeah.
And actually, sorry. Can you twist that again?
I had the problem where one day my boss comes up to me and says, you have to make the decision between a career here and your DJ career.
So somebody has had that conversation.
Yeah, it wasn't like a bad conversation. He was just like, I need to know what you want to do. Because it was before I got a promotion. I need to know what you want to do. He's like, if you want to stay and do this thing, that's totally fine. But if you want to advance here, then he's like, I'm going to need you here on weekends. I'm going to need you to be more responsible.
Right.
He didn't care. He was just laying it down and telling me this is how it is. And I was like, I don't really know. And I'm like, I can do both. I couldn't really do both. So I got that promotion, and the DJ thing kind of took a little bit of a hit. We weren't able to I just wasn't able to do dedicate as much of my time to the label and to the party and everything. And I think Jimmy we were getting to a point where Jimmy was kind of wanted to do his own stuff anyway. And that's kind of, he had always wanted to kind of do his Into the Woods label.
Right.
We talked about that forever and ever and ever. And I remember there was one thing I said, we were trying to figure out a release schedule for Plastic Love, and he wanted to put a ton of stuff on Plastic Love. And I'm like, no, it's cool, but I want some variation. I don't want it to just be all, your stuff. I want to be able to do a bunch of people's stuff, and keep it varied. And then, Jimmy's idea was I want a label. If I have a label, it's got to be my stuff. And then that's kind of why Into the Woods, I think, started Into the Woods.
Got it.
And then Plastic Love was always going to be kind of his stuff, other people's stuff, more of a curated thing, but that just wasn't going to be nine, a bunch of Jimmy Harris tracks in a row, which in retrospect, maybe we should have done that. I don't know. Hindsight's 2020. Who knows? Probably would have been better but honestly, I'm not going to lie, probably would have been better for me had we done that. Because, no.
Yeah, because do you produce as well?
I mean, I was never a producer. I tried. I really tried. I have gear. I have all this stuff. I really genuinely tried. I just could not wrap my head around building a studio. I couldn't do it.
Right.
And that's such a big part of it. And it's you can have people that'll come build a studio for you. And I had it in my head that I want to do everything my own. I want to do everything on my own. You don't really have to.
Right.
You have to recognize your strengths and weaknesses and be listen, if somebody else can set this thing up, I'll just play with shit, right? But the setting it up would always mess me up, and I would have massive anxiety, and then I would just leave projects untouched for weeks, months at a time, But then I would but I have a handful of edits that I would do sort of for myself, to play out, mashup type stuff, and kind of edity stuff, moving parts around and making stuff playable, moving drum pieces around and stuff like that, kind of use them in DJ sets. But actual full on production, we didn't really have any.
Right. I mean, I think a couple of things on that. One, I feel when we were coming up, there was definitely more of a division between there's a producer and there's a DJ.
And there were DJs, exactly.
And they don't have to be the same people.
Exactly. The DJs DJ'd.
Yeah.
Sometimes they crossed over, not all the time.
Yeah.
Some that did were really good, that some, you know, never
Because it is two very different skill sets,
yeah,
you know, like rocking a dance floor, telling a story versus like putting together sick tracks.
Yeah.
And
like a perfect example is MK, who MK, you know, started producing in the 90s, 80s and 90s. One of the best, I mean, seminal American house producer, right? I think he's from, I want to say Chicago, maybe New York, I don't remember, but everyone knows MK from all his house stuff in the 90s. Like single-handedly shaped sort of like this, you know, poppy, clubby, deep house thing in America. Never DJ'd a day in his life until like 15 years ago.
Right.
And now he DJs all the time. But like when
he's been around forever. I remember
yeah.
records like from 20 years.
Yeah.
Like,
so because I mean, at the time he would get paid like 20, 30 grand a remix. Like for a remix. I mean, which is completely unheard of now, right? But he was remixing like Mariah Carey, or he was remixing whatever. So he would do these huge pop mixes for like 30 grand a pop. He was the hottest producer like in the world probably. And then he started producing like a lot of R&B, and that was kind of his thing. Is he was like a producer, behind the scenes guy, and I think he wanted to get back into dance music and started producing more like dance stuff again, along with Lee Foss, you know, connected with Lee Foss, and then I don't know if he launched Hot Natured or Lee already had Hot Natured, but whatever. MK showed up again and started DJing again, and honestly, not that great of a DJ, and everyone is like kind of shocked. I'm like, oh, he's not a good DJ. I'm like, yeah, he's never DJed. You're watching someone DJ for the first time ever right now, you know, even though he's been around since the 90s.
Right.
But it's just like, you know, when he was started, it's like he had no desire to DJ. You know, and same thing with me when I started. I was like, I'm not a producer. Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm a DJ. I don't know how to produce.
Yeah, and like, you know, I've made maybe like 2 or 3 tracks in my life. I feel like they're decent. I never put them out, but I feel like it's just clicking. You're literally just there for hours clicking.
It's like that gets to me. And then the thing that messed me up a lot was like, you know, I know how to play piano, I know how to play drums. I was in like multiple bands. I played drums all the time. I was in like the marching band, drum line. I mean, I know how to read and play music. I just couldn't sit in front of a computer and like figure out how to make a track.
Right.
And it would just drive me crazy. I'm like, fuck it, I wouldn't do it. You know, and at the time, you know, like I said, like when I started, it was like, well, I don't have to produce. I DJ. It's fine. And then probably a couple years after I started DJing was when you kind of had that big like, oh, well, DJs are now producers also. Everyone, you know, it's like, well, what do you bring to the table? Yeah. You have to bring your own tracks. It's not just your DJ. You have to bring your own music now. And that was the whole thing for a while. Was DJs that produced were like the only ones getting booked because they needed some kind of external thing to sell.
I mean, I feel like that's just the norm now. Like,
yeah, it's exactly. So now it's like you don't produce. Yeah. It's like the only one I think that does it that's really big is like Ben UFO. Is by the way, Ben UFO and Into the Woods this Friday, June 24th. But Ben runs Hessel Audio, fantastic label. He doesn't produce, he DJs, incredible DJ, and like no one bats an eye. He gets booked all the time. No one asks him like, oh, how come you don't produce? It's just like, it's not even a thing. Right. He has transcended that. I'm like, what happened? I can just DJ. I don't have to produce.
I feel like to some extent, maybe Digweed too, because people know that like it's when he releases something, it's Nick Muir. That's really, yeah.
But I mean, that's also, you know, there's years and years and years of Bedrock Records.
Right.
And you know, him kind of having that. But it's funny because Sasha produces a ton of shit.
Right.
Well, a ton of shit.
I'm always sort of unclear as to what his level of involvement is on stuff that bears his name. You know, given that we know.
Well, I know like Charlie May does a lot of it. But I mean,
Barry.
But like I've from what I know, it's fairly heavily involved from what I've seen.
Right. I mean, it all has. You can always
tell it has his
like
stamp on it.
Yeah, there is like
it sounds like him.
There is a Sasha aesthetic.
Like it sounds more like Sasha than Spooky. Whatever you want to put on that. So. Yeah.
You know, I did see what was it? The Barbican. Did you watch that? His orchestral thing, like phenomenal.
Really cool. Yeah.
Though Charlie May is also heavily involved. But anyway, so in terms of the producer DJ kind of dichotomy thing, I mean, I get why you want to be able to prop somebody up who kind of does both things. Yeah. I do think it has had a negative impact on the actual quality of the parties, though.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like it's also, I think it's also created this like insanely huge bubble where everybody produces everything all the time, and you have to sift through a lot of stuff to get something good, because a lot of people will find that, especially younger and newer producers will kind of find a template that works and then just make stuff that sounds like stuff that's popular, which is good. That's how you learn, you know. But I think like it's finding that really like good, like unique stuff is really hard now. You know, like I'm on, and I still get promos. I'm on promo lists all the time, and it's just like I'm just clicking through stuff like, dude, it's all the same thing.
Really?
Like it's just like, what the fuck? It's all the same thing.
I guess
so it's like it makes you as a DJ kind of have to dig a lot more, which I love because that's part of being a DJ is digging more. So because when I first started, I didn't have promos to rely on, and then I think I got a little too reliant on them, and they became kind of a crutch. And I was like, that was tons of promos. And then I looked at my stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm playing 700 things from the same label, and I don't even like them. It's just like
oh yeah. So after a while, it starts to influence.
Yeah, it's just
your
God,
sound.
I'm playing the same thing like all the time. Like I don't even like this that much. So.
Yeah, like in terms of your musical progression, you mentioned kind of gravitating away from kind of the progressive sound. What's kind of your aesthetic these days? Yeah,
I mean, I've always been a primarily kind of like a ravey breakbeat DJ. That's always been what I
feel like from what I've heard of your stuff, it's very much kind of a real like old school sensibility. Yeah. Kind of real house sensibility.
Yeah. That's what I started playing. I started with house. I started with drum and bass and jungle. So I started in the rave world. So I'm very, I still very much play that kind of stuff, like big pianos, big vocals, big punchy kicks and stuff like that. But I also like playing really deep, weird stuff. It just kind of depends on where I am. There's a joke that all my friends like to tell that how bad of an opening DJ I am is because I just like to bang it out immediately, which is completely false. I feel like anybody that has actually seen me open knows that I'm a good opening DJ. Just sometimes I get a little squirrely. It happens. Sometimes it's like, all right, I got 10 minutes left. I'm gonna play a different kind of track because I want to change the mood slightly. Sorry, my bad.
I feel like DJs are always complaining. Like just recently, there was something on the memes group. Like
Saeed Yunin, I think, said was commenting on opening DJs playing 120 beats per minute, and it's like, bro, let people live, let them live.
Yeah.
Just if it's too hot, if it bangs too much, turn it off. You're gonna turn it off anyway.
Yeah.
Like you were gonna do that anyway. Number of times I've had a DJ cut the stuff that I'm playing to play something else.
Yeah, you're not obligated to mix into it.
Yeah. It's a party, dude. Last time I checked this, we're supposed to have fun. So
agreed.
That's a big that's kind of my thing. We're having fun. I'm having fun. I don't care. You either have fun with me or don't. That's on you.
But in terms of what are you noticing these days in terms of trajectory? I've noticed that the BPMs have certainly gotten a lot faster.
I've noticed that a lot really underground stuff is like that really fast speedcore. Like really people. Like Gabbard hardcore stuff. Obviously the big piano ravey stuff is coming back. I think Paul Wolford, who I love. Again, great guy. Love
piano breaks.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but he produces in a vacuum. Like every other week, there's a new Paul Wolford or a special request track. It's completely insane.
His special request shit
He's incredible.
is always.
I don't understand how he does it. I love Paul. I met Paul in a really weird circumstance where he was playing at Avalon. And I had, at the time, Avalon had just regular colored wristbands to get you backstage. So I would bring colored wristbands to figure out what they had and just put them on to sneak backstage, right? And so one day I got it right. And it was Nick Fanciulli, Paolo Mojo, and Paul Wolford were playing at Avalon. I had the right color wristband, found my way backstage, and so just started talking to him. And we were just hanging out, sitting down, talking. Eventually, the promoter figures out that I'm not supposed to be there. And she comes up and she's like, wait a minute, who the hell are you? Get out of here. And I'm like, no, I have the right color. It was not the right color at all. And she's like, that's not fake. She's like, that's fake. And she tries to kick me out. And Paul goes, hold on. Reaches in his pocket and gives me one of his wristbands. She's like, let him stay. And I was like, oh. So ever since then, Paul and I have been best friends. He doesn't know that. But we have been best friends since that day, 15 years ago, 12 years ago. But yeah, he's a great guy. And I remember last year, 2019, he said he was going to put out 6 albums in the year. And I'm like, there's absolutely no way you can put out 6 albums in a year. That's completely absurd. Sure enough, he put out 6 albums in a year, all different as special request. It got down to New Year's Eve. It was December 31st, and it was only 5. And I'm like, oh, I knew he couldn't do it. I knew there was no way he could do 6. December 31st, he puts out the 6th one for free on Bandcamp. I'm like,
yeah, he's super prolific.
Yeah. And then every other week, it's here's another just face-melting piano banger as Paul Wolford or special request.
Yeah, and it's if have you listened to that Calvin Harris side project at all, Love Regenerator?
Also good, yeah.
Yeah, actually,
and he big up Paul Wolford. He's
I
love that Paul, yeah.
Yeah, he was
and
I love what he's doing.
It made me completely rethink my feelings toward Calvin Harris because I was always like, whatever, he's an EDM dude.
Right.
But he, name dropped Paul Wolford. He's like, yeah, I love that Paul just does whatever he wants. I'm like, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. He's like, yeah, Paul does whatever he wants. He does do whatever he wants. And Love Regenerator is fucking cool. It's a cool
project. It is, yeah. It's a very cool project. And I learned that Calvin Harris isn't even really that guy's name. Right?
I know. He's Scottish. And he has a super Scottish name. I'm like, your name's not even Calvin Harris? Really?
Yeah. Calvin Harris is just a project.
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should just start putting out an EDM.
Yeah, I don't. It's just it's weird because like it's funny. Gorgon City has a couple new tracks that are very like Paul Wolford-y sounding piano tracks, and I'm like, listen, if you're gonna come for the king, you gotta come better than like what you're doing.
Right.
This is a good track.
Right.
But it's a very Paul Wolford sounding track. Don't come for the king. You're gonna miss. You're gonna miss.
Yeah, I mean, but it's crazy like how he has created a sound that now is being kind of imitated.
Yeah.
That always kind of happens, like when Deadmau5 first came out, early, like late aughts, right? Like it was very stabby, kind of digital, like Ableton. Yeah, and then all the progressive house tracks on Beatport suddenly had that same like stabby beat. What do you think that's going to be for kind of this?
So I have a theory for the next thing.
Yeah,
so
the next cycle.
My theory is that it had stuff not shut down in the last year, I think we would have gotten a lot more of that like French touch, like loopy kind of like house, tribally house stuff. I think that was going to make a comeback, and last year shunted it. I don't know if it's going to come back this year, but I have a ton of stuff that I've heard from like different producers stuff that's that kind of like that old Strictly Rhythm, like tribally, almost French, like loopy house.
Okay.
And I feel like that's gonna come back. Not necessarily like the French touch, like Justice Daft Punk, but like I can't really describe it. More like I don't know how to describe, like old DJ Sneak kind of stuff.
Okay.
Like loopy, edity, sampley stuff.
Got it.
I think it's gonna come back.
I have also been noticing a lot of, I guess what I would describe as kind of like warehouse breaks, almost jungly.
That I think they're still riding the wave from the past couple of years. Like Bicep and those guys, like Bicep championed it for years. Again, fucking awesome. Love Bicep. They championed it for a long time, and a lot of people are kind of piggybacking on that.
Yeah.
Like you got Ejeka doing his like super trancey breaking stuff, which is cool, even though it's super cheesy, but it's cool. And then people that do a really good job of that, like that I think is kind of.
Who are those guys? F Jack, or how do you know how you say that?
I think it's
Yak.
I think I was saying F Jack, but apparently it's like Fack.
Okay.
And I was always saying F Jack. I'm like, oh, it's Fack. Okay, I thought it was F Jack.
Yeah, I
those guys are cool too.
Knew it had to be something weird like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like their shit has to me like very much like an old school jungle,
like big warehouse, like
and I'm noticing a lot more of that. I mean, breaks in general, I think I see a lot more like when I'm shopping for music on Beatport.
They made a big comeback because I used to play a lot of breaks, and then I stopped because they were like it was just a lot and they were kind of cheesy,
Yeah.
But the record store that I would shop at primarily when I was younger was called DJ Culture, and they were primarily a breaks record store. So they were constantly pushing breaks on me, constantly breaks and mashups. So I have crates and crates of shitty like early 2000s breaks and mashups. If anybody wants them, you can just take them.
And actually, speaking of crates, do you still play vinyl or?
I still play vinyl, but I have not been able to purchase as much as I like. Because it's so expensive now. I was thinking about that earlier, like a couple days ago, actually, like what to do with Plastic Love records. I might, if I do it, I might just do digital because like records are so expensive. They're expensive to put out. They're expensive to buy. Like when I first started,
it's $10 per single.
I mean, 10 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Like they were $8 when I first started. And then imports were like $10-12. Now domestic. Well, first of all, there's no domestic records. They're all imports because nobody in America is pressing records anymore. You have to press them in France or some shit. And we're talking like $15-16 a pop for a record, And what are you going to play on there? One track, maybe two?
Right.
And then everyone's digital anyway. It's like,
right.
Shit. And then, trying to run like a vinyl only label, you're talking like $17-18 a release. That's so much money.
Oh, right. In terms of
just
like
because
producing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just, because if you want to, because what we were doing is we would put out, we would do both digital and vinyl. And, I would try to do the vinyl first for a couple of weeks just to kind of get vinyl sales, and then we would do digital, and then the digital sales would always sell more. I guess you could say units, not necessarily value, because I'm only charging $1.50 versus $12. But yeah, you're always going to sell more digital. It's more accessible, So even if you're like and then people try to do like vinyl only labels, and that stuff ends up digital at some point anyway.
Right.
So it's like it's rough.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is like a prestige to doing like vinyl only, but in terms of the practicality of
it's a lot.
Yeah,
because I mean, again, you're talking $5,000-6,000 per release,
right?
For something like 300 copies of a record.
Oh, that's like you mean like you as the label?
Yeah.
Wow.
You have to pay. You got to pay to press it. You got to pay to distribute it. Unless you have a distributor, you're paying for the artwork. You're paying unless you don't do artwork, but because some people, obviously, if you're just going to do white labels, you don't have to do artwork. But we would do full color artwork on the jacket and on the label, so that's expensive. We were pressing 180 gram records. That's very expensive. You know, like it's like a thick dinner plate record.
And like, would you recoup at least, or
not really?
Okay.
I actually still owe Juno like $400, and I'm never gonna pay them back. Good luck with it. 'Cause they were our distributor, and they were their whole thing was like, we will pay for the like product and distribution end of it, but you will only make like 10% of sales. We make the 90%. So we would make £1 on every record sold, and they would make the rest of it.
Got it.
So we were making like 1%, 10% on every record sold, and then Juno would do this thing where they would not where they would sell to other shops because they were a distributor. But the problem is you could just go to Juno's website and it'd be cheaper than any shop you could buy it in. So shops stopped buying from Juno because you can't compete with the Juno. They're they're selling it cheaper on the site. So people would just not buy stuff from Juno. So I ended up buying a lot of stock and just selling it all on Bandcamp. And it's weird because it was initially it was a nice push. I sold a couple of records, probably about 100. Give or take. And then every couple of months, someone will buy like one. Someone in Switzerland will buy like a record. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to send you a record to Switzerland. It costs you more to send it than to buy the record. How about I just I would just buy the digital. And then,
wait, so you would end up having to cancel orders?
No. Like I told him it's going to cost just as much to it's more to ship it than the record itself, and they don't care. They're like, that's fine. I'm like, okay. So I'll put more records in. They're like, here you go. Here's a couple records extra because it costs you 30
couple
pounds,
bonuses,
30 euro to ship a record from the US for a 10 euro record. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Here you go. So I would give them a little bit more stuff. But yeah, the label side of it is rough. Pressing vinyl is rough.
Yeah, and actually to that, wanted to ask you. So we kind of walked through the economics of throwing a party. In terms of on the label side, what's the process in terms of signing artists, releasing?
When we started deciding we wanted to run a label, I've always wanted to run a label. It's been like my dream. I thought it would have been a lot easier than it ended up being. So I was like, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and I thought it was going to be super easy. I'm like, how hard could it be?
Right.
You just you run a label. The hardest part of it was the logistics of getting everybody's schedules synced up, right? Because I didn't think that I should have 5 or 6 records ready to go. We had 3 initially. We had one from Jimmy, one from Michael Walsh, and then one from Jimmy and his friend Eli as Kazion. So we had 3 records ready to go. And the Kazion record was actually done much later. So Jimmy's was done and Michael Walsh's was done initially, and I was like, oh, we can get the 3rd one done, no problem, right? Getting the artwork and the remixes done for those 2 took probably close to a year. Just to find somebody whose remix schedule would fit into their schedule. The first one was remixed by Timothy Fairplay. It turned out an awesome remix. It turned out really well. It was the first one we put out. That one actually did really well. That one was played. I think who played it? Oh, Tim Sweeney played it on Beats and Space a bunch. Timothy Fairplay played in Detroit. Daniel Avery played in Detroit and played it at Movement in Detroit. So that was cool. So then that's when I thought, I was like, oh, dude, we got this shit. We got this locked. The second track, we had the artwork done, but no remix, because we were waiting for October to turn in a remix, and he turned in a remix, but it took him a long time because he was like, it's going to take me a few months, whatever. So things were trickling out super slowly.
Right.
And then we were trying to promote them on top of that, right? So we had Hype Music doing our digital promo, our promo service, where they would go to DJ Mag, and they would go to Mix Mag, and sort of they would be our PR. Right?
Okay, so you're paying them a fee to
okay. So they would do our PR, and they would also do our digital promo service. But they were like, well, when is it going to come out? We need a release date. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know, because it's up to now that's up to Juno when they're going to get stuff done, when they can release it. And so they would give us a date, it's going to be July, and then July rolls around, okay, it's going to be August. I'm like, oh fuck. So they kept pushing it back because the plant that Juno would use to press records would get backed up. And unless you're a popular label or pressing a lot of volume, they're not going to deal with you. So that happened a bunch too. I think that happened with the second or third one where they were trying to press it, but record store day happened, and they were trying to press the record store day records. So they're like, oh, sorry, we were going to press your records, but we had to press this fucking U2 record or something. I'm like, what? Yeah, U2 needed 6 million copies of this shitty record made. I'm like, okay, great. So then our stuff.
You're back in the queue, yeah.
Yeah, back in the queue. So I never got done. But yeah, so that part of it, the actual logistics of getting everything to sync up was impossible. I mean, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. But when it clicked and you were able to get out, it felt so good. You're like, oh, I have this, I have it. I have my release. It's here. Here it is. It's out in the world. The Kazion release, probably the best one we put out.
That was warehouse breaks.
Super breaky. I mean, it sounded like a Chemical Brothers record. I loved it. I was like, dude, this is gonna be fucking huge. It's gonna be a hit. From the time that it was finished, we put it out, I think was a little less than a year. It took a long time to get it out. And I don't know if it was like us or like something, but I think we put it out too early because it was like people were not really super into breaks at the time. It was a little too early, by like a couple months, because a few months later it was like breaks were everywhere. And I was like, should we re-release it? Like, what do we do? Like, how do we get it back out? And now, if we had released it now, I think it would have been huge. And I'm like, maybe we should do like a 2020 version or something where we just re-edit it.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, yeah, it should have been bigger than it was, I think.
Yeah, that was. There's a video with that, right? It's a bunch of like 90s rave footage.
Which we were one of the first people to do that. Like Eli found somebody, Eli's friend, I think, was like a graphic designer, and they had did the video of like that sort of 90s footage that now is everywhere. Like everyone uses it as like memes and stuff like that. But like it was like 90s rave. This guy like, you know, grinding his face off, like dancing with the music and everything. It was super cool. And the clip, the vocal in there is this girl saying, incredible atmosphere. You know, that thing was like, great atmosphere, incredible atmosphere, which we pulled off of he pulled off of rave, like this rave video, and used it as the vocal, as the hook. Awesome. And that ended up getting viral. Like after we put way after we put the record out, I'm like, this is bullshit. We did it. We were too soon. And then you're always wrestling with that too. Is like, do you just put it out immediately? Do you wait? Like, what do you do? And so I think if I could go back and redo it,
I would issue a re-release with a remix, right?
Yeah, and if I could go back and redo it, I'd probably have a lot more. I'd have like 3 or 4 records at a time ready to go, so that I could get them done ahead of time and then put them out like on a regular schedule, like every 2 months or something, instead of trying to do them one at a time. Yeah,
that's actually what I'm trying to do with this. I'm trying to bank like 4 or 5 first, and then I can start releasing them on a schedule. There's like there's less pressure to.
Yeah, like I feel like that was my idea, and then we just didn't do it. It's like I just was like, fuck it. We were putting stuff out piecemeal, and that ended up hurting us a lot because like, you know, we realized we learned things after putting out 1 or 2 records that we wanted to do differently. So the third one we put it out a little bit differently. We did more PR for that one, and we had like a better strategy for how to release a record for that third record.
Wait, so how many releases do you guys have?
Just the 3.
Just 3? Okay.
Yeah. And there was supposed to be a 4th. We actually have a remix done for the 4th. It's a Jimmy's record, and Marky did the remix. It's done, and I mean it's been years. Like, should we even put it out? I don't even know. we stopped on trying to do the artwork basically. That's kind of where we ended, and then Jimmy started Into the Woods and kind of took off with that. And so it's like, well, now it's like, do we still put it out? I don't even. Do we do it? I'm like, I'll do the artwork at this point. Shit, just make it a digital record just so we can do something. I'm bored, you know.
Yeah, so like, how did you end up figuring out the artwork? Because you said that took a year.
Yeah, because like we had artists that we worked with, and we had the same guy did the first 2. Obviously, that's why they look the same. And like something about it was like I kind of wanted to be a little bit more like ravey. I wanted to be a little bit more DIY kind of looking. I didn't want it to be that style because we initially were like going all patterns, and that was kind of the thing we wanted, was this like patterny look for these 2 records. And then the third one, I'm like, well, you can't really do that for Kazion because it's such a big ravey record. It needs to have like a ravey, you know, looking label.
Smiley face or something.
Yeah, so because we took the image of we took a still of the dancers from the video that the acapella came from and made it all like blurry and kind of touched it up, and that was like the artwork. So if you watch the video, it's like these 2 ravers dancing after a party, and they're like, you know, dancing on their own, like breaking and talking and stuff, and that's what the artwork is. And that was the third one. And the fourth one was like, you know, we had an idea for what it was supposed to look like, and then I was like, maybe we should change it for the 4th one. And you know, the problem is what I want this label to be keeps changing, and so like the music is always changing for it,
right?
Which is, you know, good and bad. Like I think it's good that you're diversified, but it's bad that I have nothing consistent.
Right. Well, you know, I think evolution is a good thing too, right? Well, cool, man. Look, we've hit an hour here. So just wanted to thank you again. This has been an amazing kind of candid look into the LA rave scene. If there's anything you want to plug, you know, bearing in mind, you know, we're gonna bank this episode, but
follow Plastic Love on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's at Plastic Love LA, everywhere, even SoundCloud, all of it.
Awesome.
And Into the Woods. Follow Into the Woods if you get a chance.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. Hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Right. Appreciate it.
Awesome.